This is week 202 of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and we're just over a month out from the 4-year mark. I'm Belokur, reporting to you from Kyiv, and I'll be taking you through the top stories from Ukraine this week. U.S. President Donald Trump said that his New Year's resolution was to bring about peace on Earth. He then almost immediately staged a special military operation in Venezuela, taking controversial President Nicolás Maduro into U.S. custody during a raid on Caracas. The operation was described by U.S. officials as part of a broader strategy to disrupt drug trafficking, enforce sanctions, and gain control over Venezuela's oil. And that last one was expressed by Trump himself in surprisingly blunt terms.
We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so.
But regardless of the motive, the operation defied the norms of international world order and set a precedent that superpowers can hand-pluck foreign leaders from their seats at will. An alarming idea in principle, but as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky joked, one that could be better used against certain other dictators.
Якщо можна, так, з диктаторами, ось так, то Сполучені Штати Америки знають, що їм робити далі.
The capture of Maduro is a huge blow to Russia's influence in Latin America, where Venezuela has been a key ally for years. Russia has been supplying Venezuela with military equipment, including sophisticated air defense systems. Now, those systems notably failed to defend Caracas against U.S. air operations during the raid, raising questions about their readiness and effectiveness, and whether they're indicative of wider quality issues among Russian military hardware. At the very least, it was an embarrassment for Russia in the midst of a painful diplomatic blow. Following the operation, America has also tightened the blockade on Venezuelan exports and enforced sanctions targeting oil shipments linked to Russia and Iran. In the waters of the North Atlantic, U.S. forces intercepted and seized a Russian oil tanker tied to the Venezuelan oil trade, which had been evading interception for weeks. A second tanker was also reported seized near the Caribbean. Russian authorities have denounced the seizures as illegal and have labeled the intercepts as piracy, escalating tensions in the diplomatic and legal arenas. Now, you might remember a few weeks ago when a Russian ship was searched by French authorities in the Baltic Sea on suspicion of launching drones at Europe. Russia also denounced that encounter as piracy. So it seems to be a fun catch-all for any interaction Russian sailors have with any foreign authorities. There's an argument that last week's operation, by exposing the limits of having Russia as an ally, could indirectly strengthen Ukraine's position. The fact that Russia could do nothing to defend Maduro, despite its long-standing support, underscores how little a strategic partnership with Moscow is worth, a lesson already learned in Syria and Iran in recent years. But reports from European capitals suggest NATO allies are wary that Washington's attention and resources may be stretching thin across multiple global flashpoints. As with every new conflict and crisis, it's nerve-wracking for Ukraine to fall out of the headlines, giving Russia cover to strike while the world is distracted. And Russia did strike Ukraine hard overnight on Thursday, in a combined missile and drone attack that killed at least 4 people and started fires across Kyiv. Perhaps most shocking was the revelation that Russia had once again deployed its intermediate-range nuclear-capable Oreshnik ballistic missile, this time at the far western Ukrainian city of Lviv, about an hour's drive from the Polish border. As with the only other time Russia successfully deployed the Oreshnik against the Ukrainian city of Dnipro in 2024, the missile that hit Lviv wasn't equipped with nuclear warheads. My colleagues visited one of the attack sites here in Kyiv. I'll let them show you.
Безпосередньо було влучання у наш поверх. Двигун від дрона лежав в мене біля квартири. Біля мого будинку вмерла людина, яка приїхала рятувати. Це так називаємий double kill, коли прилітає по співробітниках дрон. Наразі от така ситуація у нас. Все видно і все зрозуміло.
This is a story that we've been through more than once. Ukrainian and European leaders met in Paris on Tuesday to discuss an end to the war and security guarantees, with France and the UK signing a declaration of intent stating that they'll deploy troops to Ukraine after a ceasefire. Even as leaders of this so-called coalition of the willing expressed optimism that these guarantees could be codified into laws and plans, some key contradictions and questions remain. The plan laid out this week stipulated that foreign troops would act only as peacekeepers, not combatants, and would be deployed only after a ceasefire. So obviously, this renders the promise of security toothless until a ceasefire is achieved, which doesn't do much for Ukraine right now as it fights for survival. And Russia gives no indication of being genuinely interested in stopping its war. Likewise, it's all good to say that the troops would be peacekeepers only and wouldn't engage Russian forces directly. But there's clear need for agreement on what the response would be if such forces are directly attacked. Such policies would not only need to be hammered out in detail, but also ratified by the parliaments and governments of each individual country. So in short, even in a best-case scenario, this is far more complicated, long-term, and thus unlikely to make a difference than Europe would like to admit. Russia has said point-blank that it rejects even the suggestion of a Western military presence on Ukrainian soil, now or in the future. Moscow is unlikely to compromise on this point. One of their main narratives is that they invaded Ukraine because NATO was expanding too far east in Europe. They likely won't end the war on terms that place NATO troops at the border of Russian-controlled land. And none of the announcements this week indicated a change in the West's persuasion or leverage on that front.
Що Росія не сприймає реально всерйоз дипломатичну роботу, яку з нею намагаються вести цивілізовані країни. Росія затягує війну, намагається завдати Україні якнайбільше шкод. Їхня стратегія незмінна.
Despite the lack of a breakthrough, on Wednesday, President Zelensky said that negotiations had hit a new milestone and that peace could be achieved in the first half of 2026. Now, the operative word there is could. What's left unsaid is that in order for that to happen, Europe needs to do far more than promise hypothetical support in a distant future. Russia will not stop the war because they feel that they've reached a reasonable compromise. They will stop the war when they can't fight anymore. If Europe wants a ceasefire, it needs to bring Russia to a point where it can't fight anymore. And this week wasn't it. We made it to 2026 thanks to you. We're a reader-funded news outlet, meaning that shows like this are only made possible by viewers like you. If you'd like to join our community of more than 25,000 members, there will be a link to our membership page in the description below. I'd also like to thank everyone who donates directly via YouTube. Your support is greatly appreciated. In the wake of the huge corruption scandal that rocked the Ukrainian government in late 2025, the president has been appointing some new and some not-so-new faces to his inner circle. So we're going to do a quick overview of the main names and titles that you need to know. Kirilo Budanov, formerly the head of Ukraine's military intelligence, has been appointed as Zelensky's new chief of staff. Budanov, who is already a recognizable figure both in Ukraine and abroad, is known for overseeing long-range covert operations and deep strike missions in Russian-controlled territory. His appointment, while somewhat surprising, was about as well received by the public as any could be. You'll recall that his predecessor was longtime Zelensky ally Andriy Yermak, whose tenure as chief of staff was controversial from the start and culminated in a dramatic stepping down when his office was searched in relation to the recent scandal. Budanov has been replaced in his former role by Oleg Ivashenko, until now head of Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service. Zelensky also proposed former Prime Minister and soon-to-be former Defense Minister Denys Shmyhal to assume the role of Energy Minister, a sector that was at the heart of the recent scandal involving a state-owned nuclear company. Beyond Kyiv's central offices, the president also moved to refresh regional leadership. On January 3rd, he announced plans to install new governors for 5 oblasts: Vinnytsia, Ternopil, Poltava, Dnipropetrovsk, and Chernivtsi, signaling a broader administrative reshuffle tied to the ongoing reorganization at the national level. Taken together, this week's developments reflect the president's attempts to both consolidate security and show progress to the public in the wake of a huge blow to his credibility and trustworthiness as a leader. Zelensky must not only demonstrate his leadership to the Ukrainian people, but also to the European and NATO allies who are watching closely and making decisions about everything from military aid to membership in economic alliances.
Hello everyone, I'm here to answer the questions from our community. And today's question is from Destroyer. Okay, that's intense. The question is, what should one make of Budanov's appointment? Is Zelensky setting him up to be his successor as Ukraine's next president by giving him a political post? Did he choose him as an intelligence leader because he's better equipped to crack down on anti-corruption agencies? Is he hoping he can coordinate efforts to harm, sabotage Russia's interests globally in cooperation with other countries beyond what Ukraine has been able to do in its own? I think yes, and for all the 3 questions that you asked. So there's 2 options, right? Budanov is a really popular figure in Ukraine. He's the 3rd most popular presidential candidate, according to a December poll, only behind Zelensky and Zaluzhny. So definitely tying him, Budanov, to the president allows Zelensky to boost his own electoral support, but also allows him to pick maybe not a successor, but a person who can lead, for example, a political party named after Zelensky, obviously a political party that has Zelensky's name in it and is led by Budanov, will do pretty good in the upcoming elections whenever they happen. Obviously, we know that Zelensky's current party, the Servant of the People Party, is really unpopular, and that if Zelensky is going to run for office, he will need to change the name of the party. He will need to change the people running the party, and Budanov is an ideal candidate. Also, Budanov is a really powerful figure in Ukraine, I would say, right? He headed the military intelligence before being appointed as the head of the president's office. So he will definitely have a good grip on Ukraine, both domestic and foreign affairs. So we can expect him to do what the president's office did beforehand, right? Control everything that's happening in the country. If we look at appointments made by Zelensky to the president's office, it's Budanov who leads it, Kyslytsya, who's an experienced diplomat. He's now Budanov's deputy. There's also Mr. Tatarov, who is basically in charge of courts in Ukraine. So the president's office is extremely powerful. It has all the necessary features to basically become a government in itself. And I think that's what Zelensky wants. He doesn't want to go through parliament. He doesn't want to have approval by lawmakers. He doesn't want to consult with people. He wants to have a government that's really fast and that's able to execute whatever the president wants. And I think this appointment makes it easier. It's also interesting that everyone who got recent appointments and also people who are now leading the talks had conflict with the previous president's office head, Mr. Yermak. So Budanov had a conflict with Yermak. Also, the future defense minister, Mr. Fedorov, has or had a conflict with Yermak. So it looks like the anti-Yermak camp won. And it's interesting how the president now turned to those people to try what Mr. Yermak couldn't do.
That's all for this week. We'll be back next Sunday with more news from Ukraine. If you appreciated this video, please consider becoming a member of the Kyiv Independent community. It's truly thanks to viewers like you that we can do this work, and we're so grateful for your support. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.